I'm Zachary Farley, an associate in Collier, Walsh, Nakazawa's Seattle office. Today, I'm going to be talking about a recent decision brought forth to us from that bastion of maritime precedent, the Federal Third Circuit Court of Appeals. The Third Circuit recently handed down a decision in U.S. v. Vastardis, published on December 7th, 2021. Now, to all my Greek friends, I am so sorry for how I am pronouncing and will be pronouncing that name throughout this video. Please let me know how it should really be pronounced. I'd appreciate it. Now, Vastardis is one of those really fun decisions that makes maritime law so interesting, and the operation of a global maritime fleet so complex and maybe maddening. Vastardis is not a case where an owner failed in its obligations to a charterer, or where a charterer failed to provide services to a cargo holder. Rather, this is a case where an engineer, working deep in the bowels of a vessel, can make a decision that affects everyone in the global web of waterborne commerce. Essentially, Vastardis is a magic pipe case. A case where an engineer rigged up a water supply to fool the vessel's oil content meter to constantly report that 0 parts per million was being discharged by the vessel's oil-water separator. This engineer kept daily records in the vessel's oil record book, showing anywhere between 0 and 2 parts per million being discharged during the vessel's voyage across international waters. Now, when the vessel arrived at a U.S. port, the Coast Guard wasn't surprised so much by the oil content meter's reading of 0 parts per million when it turned it on for their review, but that it could give this reading with the valve regulating the pipe that supplied the meter with water to analyze being closed. Obviously, this raised some suspicions with the Coast Guard. Now, when the valve was opened, the meter read 40 parts per million, far in excess of allowable levels, and that caused the vessel to be restrained and the engineer to be arrested for presenting false records, obstruction of an official investigation, and other charges. The engineer opted for a unique defense. Since the discharges and falsified records were all actions taken in international waters, the United States did not have jurisdiction to enforce the many MARPOL violations at issue. Again, unique, but unavailing. What the Third Circuit ultimately found, and in line with prior decisions in the Fifth and Second Circuits, was that the engineer's crimes over which the U.S. had jurisdiction were not those committed in international waters, but those committed by presenting falsified records to the Coast Guard. The Third Circuit also made the very obvious observation that MARPOL can only be enforced by signatory nations. There aren't MARPOL police sailing the high seas to check oil-water separators. As a MARPOL signatory, the U.S. can't simply accept obviously fake records just because they were doctored in international waters. There could be no enforcement of MARPOL in such a scenario. But as a lawyer, I get it. You have to try something, and those lawyers worked with what they had. Here, the ship owner was not brought into the criminal action. However, the vessel and her 32 crew members were restrained for a month while the Coast Guard conducted its investigation, and ultimately indicted the engineer at fault. As anyone in the maritime industry knows, a month's delay means missed deliveries, charter claims, and trouble. Now, in other magic pipe cases, the ship owner was brought into the criminal action. But in Vastardis and the other decisions before it, they're really just examples of how an entire crew can do its job, how the vessel owner can pay the vessel's mortgage, how the subcharterer can pay higher up the chain, and how the balance of all parties in a voyage can come undone because one crew member abuses their authority and their independence and decides to find a way to get around the very real requirements of their job rather than doing what they're supposed to do the right way. Well, why bring up this case? That's a great reminder that international actions can have domestic consequences when vessels sail into U.S. waters. If you have any questions about the environmental or other regulatory obligations that your voyage into U.S. waters might subject you to, please reach out to us here at Collier, Walsh, Nakazawa. Thank you.